This is Secrets to Win Big, your roadmap to sustained growth. Brought to you by Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, brand whisperer, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. Find him at zenmango.com. And now, here's your host, Arjun Sen.
Welcome to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. I'm Arjun, and it's truly a pleasure to welcome you on this edition. At Secrets to Win Big, you would hear from leaders from all walks of life who will share their individual paths to success. Winning is always fun, but I have found that winning big really puts you in the position for long-term sustainable win. Today, my VIP guest is Jeffrey Hayzlett. Jeffrey Hayzlett is a primetime television host of C-Suite with Jeffrey Hayzlett, an executive perspective live on C-Suite's TV. He's the host of award-winning All Business with Jeffrey Hayzlett on C-Suite's radio. Hayzlett, a global business celebrity, Hall of Fame speaker, chairman and CEO of C-Suite's network, home of the world's most trusted network of C-Suite leaders, and best-selling author. His most recent book is The Hero Factor: How Great Leaders Transform Organizations and Create Winning Cultures. Jeffrey Hayzlett's primetime TV and podcast host, chairman and CEO of C-Suite's network, keynote speaker, best-selling author, and global business celebrity. And one of the things I want to add is every interaction, every time Jeffrey has, he adds value to the person across. Jeffrey, truly a pleasure to welcome you to this podcast.
Well, it's a pleasure to be here. I like any podcast that's big. I like that. Big is good.
Thank you. Thank you. And that gets me to the first question right away is you see big opportunities where most of us don't. And then you create a path where you say this so often is crawl, walk, and run. Yeah. So the first part is, how do you see opportunities when most of us miss it?
I don't know. A lot of it's experience, in terms of being in the right place at the right time so many times. But I say that all the time. I bought and sold over 250 businesses, 25 billion in transactions. So when you've done this numerous times, that's just part of it. I also think maybe it's a little bit, the brain is wired a little bit that way. In terms of, just like someone has good vision or better vision than others, some wear glasses, some don't. I have the ability, I think, to be in these business things, to look for those opportunities all the time. And I don't always think about what caused that to happen. It just happens, It's like my wife will say, "Hey, you want to go to dinner somewhere?" And she goes, "Where do you want to go to dinner?" And I'll say, "T Steakhouse." And she goes, "You didn't even think about it." "Oh yeah, I did. I thought about 400 different places in my head. And that's where I wanted to go. And you didn't think I did that, but I did do that. We just didn't have a discussion about the 400 restaurants that we could have listed. I just went right to that because that's where I want to go." So, and that's the way these things come at me. It's like, it's everything's a big cloud and all this stuff is there. And all of a sudden I can pinpoint and go, that thing right there, that.
And in that, I think, what you just also showed is from the big cloud, you're picking that one thing. And there's a very rapid processing, but then you're also committing to that decision. So as you get into how does crawl, walk, and run, how does that help to get ideas to make them big success?
Well, there's a process that you have to go through. And I don't care whether you're a little child all the way through an athlete. We all started off with crawl, then we had to walk, then we had to run. Now, some of us move through those steps a little faster, but you never get to skip them. And the same thing with business. You got to lay great foundations, great processes. You have to outline the values of what you want to do, the value of what you're going to provide to the customer, the messaging. All those steps got to occur. If you've done it more, you can move through those steps faster, but you still have to do them, right? So if you're using like Asana or a Monday, you still have to lay those things out. You just get to skip them and click them and make them green pretty quick because you've gone through them. And that's the way you find a lot of entrepreneurs who've done this over and over. You see some entrepreneurs, they have 4 or 5 exits. Well, why do they have 4 or 5 exits? Well, it's because they got that process down and really know and got it fine-tuned. Now, outside of that, they might not be as good on the personal side. They might not be as good in other domains as they are in that. And I think that's the way it is for great entrepreneurs too.
Yes, I think that's brilliant. So if you just tuned in, you're listening to Jeffrey Hayzlett, and Jeffrey just told us something which is so simple but brilliant, is whether you're a child or an athlete, you must go through the 3 phases: crawl, walk, and then run. Some of those you can go through faster over time, but it's very important to know that you cannot skip a step, and that's very essential for success. So Jeffrey,
well, Arjun, Arjun, I could jump in. Let's imagine you want to be a maestro, and you're going to be a maestro. You want to be a great musician. You got to start off playing bad notes, man. But if you practice really well, or you got to learn to read music first, So these are the steps you got to go through. But all of a sudden you see one musician picks up another instrument fairly quickly. Well, he can skip the reading music part. Okay, he can skip the tempo part. He can skip the, I don't know, the genre. I don't know. You can tell I'm not music, but nonetheless, you can eventually be a maestro. You can eventually be a world-class musician in many areas, but you've got to go through those steps. You never stop those steps. Period.
Absolutely, that's brilliant. Like, even though you claim you're not a musician, but what you said is simply brilliant. Is you start with playing bad notes on the way to be a maestro. It's like. That's absolutely brilliant. Like, these are one-liners. I really think we all listening to you love, getting these, because headlines stick with us, and that's brilliant. Yeah. So in your amazing career, you have had incredible amount of successes. If you have to pick one and, show us some secrets to how you got there, what would you pick? What would you share?
Well, I mean, there's been a lot of things I've done over my career. I think the one that had the biggest impact, at least in scale, was when I became the chief marketing officer at Kodak, without question. It was a Fortune 100 company. I stepped into a very big environment. I stepped into a very big quagmire of opportunity and also, bad things that could and did occur in that process because, we're going through the digital transformation. Like a lot of companies, it wasn't necessarily Kodak's fault, so to speak. The situation's the situation, I used to ask people, like, in audiences, like, how many of you bought a roll of film in the last year? And this is back in the mid 2008, and only a few hands would go up, and I would say, well, welcome to my life. That's what it was like back then. And so I think that one had probably the most profound kind of impact. Now, how did I get there? I got there because I was a valued consultant. I was a valued contributor. I'd worked with Kodak over a decade before, as I worked with Xerox and lots of major printing companies. And so I worked alongside of them doing different kinds of work and in ancillary industries, selling them. They were my customers. Kodak was, Xerox was, Mito was, all Fuji was, I can name Mito. I can go, oh my gosh, I'm just trying to think of all the printing companies, but hundreds of different printing companies I was selling to in the mid 90s or early 90s. And so I knew them along the way, and I had the opportunity to come up with I exited out of one other business that I was in called WebPrint and Color Bus at the time, a technology company. We were partners with Sheldon Adelson, who owns the Venetian, one of the richest men in the world. And we were doing some technology businesses with him. And we tried to corner the market on web printing. And web printing meaning the internet web, not web in terms of the kind of printing that there is. There is a web offset printing, by the way, for those people who don't know. But we're talking about, we were AOL print, we were Kinko's print, we were all those. We were the technology behind printing on the internet, which we all thought was going to take off. We thought it was going to be $1 billion business. It turned out to be a $10 million business. And I was there to try to build a $1 billion business. So I left that. And in the process, I started thinking about, well, where is printing going to go? What's going to happen with it? What's the imaging business? Who owns that? Who's at the crux of that? Well, that was Kodak, clearly. They had more patents than anybody else. And so I devised a strategy to take to them to buy other companies of core technologies, of what they could have that would drive them to the future. And that core technology sold them a couple $1 billion worth of technology. And in that process of selling it, they said, hey, you got to come over and help us run it. And I said, sure, I'll do that if I can be the chief marketing officer. At that time, they had a chief marketing officer, so that mean they would have had to fire that person. They said, no, but we'll name you the chief business development officer, and we'll put you in the graphic side of the business. And if you do really well, we'll give you this overall job. I said, done, I'm in, because I wanted to go and work for a big major brand like that. And that's how I stepped in.
I'm so glad you picked the Kodak example, because I was talking to a fan of yours who has seen you do that transition. And he described your performance there as, of course, a former Fortune 100 CMO that led the team through one of the biggest turnarounds in corporate American history that made an impact way beyond Kodak and that time frame. And a lot of us look at resumes, but Jeffrey, when somebody after all these years recall in that brilliant way, it's really incredible on the impact you had, and that too beyond Kodak. And the second thing also, I talked to quite a few people about your favorite phrase, and you just said that you are, the word you just used is I'm in. And I really feel that is so important in the business world, is the consistency and authenticity with which you say I am in, and you mean it. Like, I've seen you in action, and just want to bring it to all of us who are listening is, being like Jeffrey, a lot of us want to be getting there, but one of the big things is when you're in, you have to say with commitment, I'm in.
Yeah, you have to drink I call it drinking the Kool-Aid. Some people get mad at me because I say that, but you say, well, you should drink the champagne. I said, well, let me be clear. For most of us stepping into most corporate jobs, it ain't about drinking champagne. It's about drinking Kool-Aid. Yep. You're getting a test. It's a test. And you either make the commitment to it or you don't make the commitment. You can drink champagne after you succeed if you like that. I prefer scotch, but nonetheless, we'll get into that. But it is a commitment. And if you're not doing it, because it's going to get tough. It's not easy, especially at that level. And I, by the way, I thank you for bringing that nice accolade from someone. Yeah, I did a lot during that time period. I mean, I helped change the way a lot of people were doing marketing at that time, because everybody was doing it the old way. And I said, nope, this is changing. Social's coming. Get ready. I was one of the first 1,000 people on Twitter. I named the very first chief blogger. No one had ever had a blogger. And I said, well, we're going to name a chief blogging officer. And we were the very first ones to do it. I named the first chief listening officer, which was the first person to list social media and figure out that, hey, we're going to move from this centralized planning, of how we operate for products. Now we're going to drive products, how we're going to drive change, and how we're going to drive marketing to this decentralized thing that's out there with all these people who are going to have input on it. And everybody was freaking out. And I said, well, get ready, because it's coming, and it'll make us faster, quicker, more nimble. But you got to have a thick skin in it. That's why I said you got to drink the Kool-Aid, because people are going to come at you. They're going to attack you. We used to have that all the time. People come to us and complain. And I'd always say, like, well, how many people complain on Twitter about us today? And they would say, well, maybe it was 10. I said, come back when you got a 0. Come back when you got 2 zeros. Because you should be able to it. Like even a thought leader. You can't be a thought leader unless you have haters. You can't be, a good company without pushing the edge of it and having distractors. You're going to have that. So you just got to drink the Kool-Aid. You got to say you're all in, because it can get depressing. It can get hard when people are yelling at you, calling you things, and they do at that level. Trust me. I mean, I experienced that the third day of working at Kodak. I got called into the chairman's office the third day.
Wow. For
doing something wrong. And it wasn't really my fault, but I'm the chief marketing officer. It's my responsibility. And I was chief business development officer at the time. But yeah, I was the one responsible for it. So I got called. I got my butt called into the office and chewed out for rightfully so. And I was valuable less. So,
but at the same time, I think what you just showed us is not only are you seeing trends, but you're also acting. Like you being one of the first 1,000 on Twitter, the first person to put somebody in charge of blogging, a first chief listening officer. I think that is very important for us to all learn. Listening to you is not only you have to see the trend, but also have to take the risk and be ready for that call on the third day of a new job as a CXO.
Yeah.
And be confident to get through it. But all that comes from action. So Jeffrey, if I take you back a little bit, what's your biggest inspiration, like a person or story that you source so much of your confidence and inspiration from?
Well, I was lucky enough with my parents to allow to be able to just pretty much do anything I want. So it was a lot of hands off, and some of it even to the point when I was 15, 16, moving out of my own house at that time. So I was pretty much on my own in my teens, and so you learn to be resilient. You learn to eat. You learn to gotta work to eat. If you're gonna eat, if you're gonna have clothes, I those kind of things. Like, yeah, that's some pretty important stuff. So, the most important thing was I always remember this story, and some people probably won't like it, but my dad taught me how to swim at the what was the name of that place? We lived at a trailer park. And there was a swimming pool in the middle of it, Holiday Estates, that's what it was called, in Warner Robins, Georgia. And we lived on King Arthur Lane, all right? And we had a trailer. My dad was in the military. My mother worked as a bookkeeper for the trailer park at Montgomery Estates. And so he taught me he taught me to swim. He took me down to the swimming pool. He put one of those rubber things around me. He pulled the plug and he threw me in the deep end. Wow. Okay? That's how I learned to swim. Because otherwise, I remember choking a lot of water. And, he made sure I didn't go under. But, that's how he taught me to swim. Okay, that's how you learn most things that you do in business, quite frankly. Even at Kodak, I'm sitting in meetings going, my God, somebody should fix this. And I'm looking around until I realized, oh, that's me. It's me. I'm the one responsible for it. A person that's responsible for your success looks at you in the mirror every single day. That's the person that's responsible. Person responsible for your business looks back at you in the mirror every single day. Person responsible for sales looks back at the mirror every single day. I mean, you're the one. So I learned that very quickly, and you're gonna have to buck up, buttercup, and get it done.
So you talked about resilience in the business world. What would be your advice to leaders who are trying to get to the next level? Like, what is resilience in the business world?
Well, I use the word relentless. You have to be relentless. It's like somebody I just got through phone talking a few minutes ago runs a Jewish marketing agency, real good friend of mine. And, in New York, 10% of the population is Jewish. If you want to penetrate a good buying market, even during COVID right now, the men have to wear suits. They're required to wear suits. You and I can get by with just putting on a suit coat and our Zoom shirt and wear shorts. Nope. They're required, the Orthodox Jews, to wear suits. Boom. So you learn things. So there's opportunity for that. And we were saying, well, with COVID, everybody's kind of like, well, maybe we shouldn't bother them. Maybe we're still slower. No, you have to be relentless. Okay. If you want to reach big brands, you want to sell to them, you want to sell to the corporate world, you have to keep call them 50. You didn't reach them the first time, second time, third time, fourth time, fifth time. Just keep calling till you do it, because eventually they're going to pick up that phone. That's just the way they are, right? So you have to learn to be relentless. In the corporate world, that's what you have to do. You are surrounded by champions of no, captains of no, everywhere you go in a corporate world. Arjun, you worked in the corporate world. As progressive as Papa John was, there are people around you who say it's not in the budget. There are people around you who say, oh, we tried that once before. Oh, there are people around you who say that will never work. And they are champions of no. They're like it's like running a gauntlet, okay, inside of a corporation and in most businesses, quite frankly. And, I have that in my own team. They'll say, oh, Jeff, we didn't have it in the budget. I said, who gave you a budget? I said, go do it. Right? I didn't give you a budget. And I got you think that $120 is expensive a month. Oh, no, it's not. Not for what we could get in the backside. So let me convince you of that. You just have to be relentless.
I think, that was brilliant is you are surrounded by champions of no, and you have to be relentless. Like, these are one-liners I think will stay with all of us, Jeffrey, as we are listening. I'm listening to you. So here's a question for you is, in the corporate world, many a time, imminent failure stares at us. True leaders get their team to navigate and turn that into some of the biggest successes ever. So can you talk about, sometime you were literally failure was staring at you and how you guided the team to one of your biggest wins?
Right now, right. We're in the middle of it. All of us are. Listen, COVID-19, almost all of us. There's businesses going out of business all over the place. And you can sit and whine about it. I got that. I understand. For some people, some businesses, I'm sorry, you are literally screwed. because that's the nature of it. But where there is crisis, there is opportunity at all sides. There's always a shot, and of some kind. Now you might have to totally change, but it's just like that movie Dumb and Dumber, where he goes up to her and says, "Do you think we have a chance? What's my chance of dating you?" And she goes, 1 in 10 million. He goes, "So there's a chance." Okay, there's a chance. All right. And so right now, when you look at it, listen, Arjun, I am not a doctor. I am not a nurse. I can't even sew a mask. But what I can be is a business first responder. That's my job. So I could sit back and complain and say, look, I'm not going to hit my 1K. I'm not going to hit my global status on United. I'm not going to do this. I can complain about it, or that I can get my, pull my pants up and I'll put on my big boy pants or big girl panties and whatever. And I can put them on and I can go drive and thrive, not survive. A lot of people talk about surviving. Drive and thrive. So it's a mindset of saying, I'm not just going to survive. I'm going to get through it, and I'm going to be stronger, and I'm going to be better for it. So we've done that with our C-suite network. I mean, you would think that we would be seeing a downturn, when quite the opposite of that. We're on an upturn. Why? Because we said we're going to change the model a little bit, and we're going to get more aggressive. We're going to turn it up, and we're going to put a quarter in and go for the full ride. And this is what we're going to do. And so that's what you have to do sometimes. So it's many times I faced that. Many times I've come close to bankruptcy, when I owned a printing company one time. And I just had to pick up the phone and have real blunt conversations. Look, you squeeze me now, you'll never see a penny. It'll go bankrupt and you won't get it. Or you can work with me. So my first year I made money. My second, third year, I lost so much money. My fourth year, I turned it back around, turned it positive, paid off all my debts, and I could hold my head up high. Right. So it happens all the time. It happens all the time in business. There are good days and there are bad days. You just have to string more good days together than bad days. And you're going to fail. That's the other thing. Everybody talks about, failing fast. That's the big kind of thing we hear right now. Oh, it's fail fast. Bullshit. Who wants to fail fast? Failing sucks. I want to win fast. So, I'm going to fail. Trust me. I fail all the time. Fail every day. But in the end, what I got to try to do is win. And I got to win fast and big.
I love this about the mindset you talked about. It's not the mindset to survive, but the mindset to drive and thrive.
Exactly.
So, Jeffrey, if Jeffrey from today in 2020 got a chance to talk to Jeffrey just coming out of college, just launching his career, what would be one advice you would give that amazing kiddo?
Go faster. Go faster. I think we wait around sometime for somebody else to do it. I think sometimes we wait for someone to give us permission. I think we wait for, all the things to be in place. And my advice to most people, my advice to myself would have been, I would have knocked down those walls a lot faster. And even though I did them pretty fast, I would have done a lot faster. And the other thing I learned, especially being from South Dakota, I'm from a state where most people call it a flyover state. It's like Middle Earth, right? But yet we're a very progressive economy, but we're small. I mean, there's more people in the stands at Indianapolis 500 the day of the race than our entire state. So that's, it's just the nature. We've been practicing social distancing since 1889, so that's our state. Well, I thought it was I grew to be a pretty big business in South Dakota till I realized there was Iowa, till I realized there was Indiana, till I realized there was New York. Then I realized there's Japan. Then I realized there's the UK. And I learned that I could add zeros very quickly. And I learned that no matter whether you're on Main Street in Sioux Falls, South Dakota, or you're in Wall Street in New York City, it's just zeros. And it's the same kind of people, and the same people I see in those businesses in Wall Street come from my state, come from other places in the world, and they put their pants on just like anybody else. And I would have done it a lot faster because I would have been on Wall Street a lot faster, if I'm measuring that as my success. And that's my point. My point is, no matter how big you think you are, there's always someone bigger, and you can be bigger, and you could do it bigger. And that's the title of your show. And I would have done it a lot faster.
So every leader I talk to, I realize true leaders' success doesn't happen by chance. There's a process, because I find success that is planned, that's the success that can be repeated. So, with every leader, I love to ask the same question at the end is there a process that when you wake up in the morning, what's the first thing you think of? And what's the last thing when you're winding down from your work life? What's the last thing you think of or do, Is there a ritual or a process on your daily routine?
So my first thing I think of are the things that I've got to get accomplished that day. And I write this, you'll see a sheet here, I'll show it to you, but this is my sheet for today. This is my sheet for yesterday. And there, you see the lines, it's the same ones. I kind of like do that way. Like here's my key things I've got to get done today. Here are my key thought processes or things I need to check on. And then here are the calls, the emails, the kinds of things I've got to get done. And I focus that, so I prioritize my day every day. And then I look at my calendar and say, okay, does everything relate to the priorities of the things I've got to get done? You know, because I've got to deliver on my conditions of satisfaction. So are those things that I'm looking at right now going to get me where I'm supposed to? And if not, I don't do them. Not doing them, you know? So I'm really focused in on what can I eliminate? What can I delegate? What can I automate, you know, in my system? And at night, I try to reflect on the things I did right, you know, and the things I did wrong. If you watch me come off the stage after a keynote and I'll turn to a staff and said, okay, how'd that go? What'd you think? What can I have done better? And that's what I look at the end of my day. What could I have done better? And is there anything that I've left off that day that I should have got accomplished because I need to address that. So, and then I'm trying to work more of this into my mindset of what I'm grateful for. Because I don't think I think we need more mindfulness practices around that. I think it helps you because I'm constantly go. I think it's time for you to also just pause. Mm-hmm. And you need some of that in your life. Otherwise, you don't have that balance.
Jeffrey, thank you. This was absolutely incredible. For those of you who are listening, all of us, we got so many incredible nuggets, but I just want to leave you with 5 things Jeffrey Hayzlett gave us today. The first thing he just gave us was, whether you're a child or an athlete, you have to go through every time through the phases of crawl, walk, and run. Over time, it gets faster. But for you to get to long-term success is very important to build the process. Another huge nugget was, to be a thought leader, you have to get used to all the naysayers or haters, because without that, you are not living at the cutting edge. And what also I think all of us got was, Jeffrey, your confidence when you walked into the office of the CEO on the 3rd day with the commitment, even though it was you just were new at the job, but you owned everything from day one. The third big aha was you're surrounded by champions of no's, which means being resilient is very important. No is a very strong inertia. Breaking it takes time, and that's another big aha you gave us. Going faster, all of us can, and that's the part where the thing that personally really stayed with me was, we are surrounded, we all around, we wait around and we wait for permission. Nobody ever gives permission to break the wall. So to me, I really think doing it faster. And finally, I think with all of us right now, this was such a very relevant message for us is, don't just get into the mindset to survive. There are opportunities. Trust yourself, as Jeffrey Hayzlett just said right here, is get into the mindset to drive and thrive. And even somebody who is this high functioning as Jeffrey, what he also talked about at the end was, it's very important to be in a state of go, but then also pause, to look at mindfulness and be grateful and be full of gratitude. Jeffrey, again, thank you. I can't thank you enough for all these valuable lessons, wisdom you shared with all of us. Thank you.
Thank you. I appreciate it.
Thank you all for listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen. For those of you who are listening live on Facebook, I really appreciate you taking the time. And if you just even put a heart or a like or anything or share with friends, I would really appreciate that. And I'm looking forward to bringing you another leader next week who will share his or her wisdom from a different walk of life. Thank you again. Thank you, Jeffrey Hayzlett. Thank you.
Thank you.
You've been listening to Secrets to Win Big with Arjun Sen, founder and CEO of Zen Mango, brand whisperer, top brand growth driver, and a former Fortune 500 executive who has been called one of the most marketing intelligent minds in the business. To learn more, visit www.zenmango.com. Share this podcast with your friends and subscribe wherever you like to listen to podcasts.